live streaming it, but I'll let Dee take over.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Dee Buckstaff, a member of the Wyoming League of Women Voters. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Wyoming League of Women Voters, Teton County Library, KHOL, WyoFile, the Jackson Hole News and Guide, and Buck Rail. We have two races represented tonight. The St. John's Health Board of Trustees will be first on the agenda, and then the Teton County Conservation District will have Roby Hurley speaking at the very end. Nate Fuller is not able to be with us. He will be on the ballot for those of you who are in his area. The candidates for the hospital board will each have 1 minute to introduce themselves, and then our media panel will ask questions. Our media panel tonight consists of Tom Hallberg from the Jackson Hole News and Guide and Jacob Gore from Buck Rail. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions on a rotating basis, so everyone has a chance to go first. And Susan Dong, she is a League of Women Voters member. She's our timekeeper tonight and will indicate when time is running out so candidates can sum up their answers. Each candidate is allowed a red card to use at any time, and that red card is worth up to 2 minutes and can be used as the candidate sees fit. If audience members are interested in proposing questions for the candidates, we do have someone monitoring the streaming sites, and any questions posted there will be considered for asking by our media panelists. Candidates will then have 1 minute at the end of the evening to give a summation or present closing remarks. And so when we are done with the hospital board of trustees candidates, we will ask Roby to do a little speech. So let's start with Scott Gibson giving us an introduction.
And Dee, how long an introduction? Is it 1 minute or 2 minute or?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, great. Okay, well, my name is Scott Gibson. I've served on this board for over 8 years. So the longest serving trustee aside from Bruce. When I joined the board was in quite a bit of dysfunction. Leadership was in dysfunction. The relationship with the foundation was terrible. And so we really tried to go back to basics. First, trying to make sure we have the very best CEO. And so we embarked upon a search process, brought Lou Holkaiser in, and then Paul Beaupre. I was on those search committees. The second is a strong succession for board candidates. We've set up citizens and foundation members and a whole host of ways that people could get involved so we could groom future trustees. And then lastly, repairing the relationship with the foundation and recruiting a great CEO over there. All that's been done in those 8 years. And this is me running for my last term. Thank you.
Debbie, can you go next, please?
I sure can. I'm the newest member of the Board of Trustees. Moved to Jackson 3 years ago and talked to a counselor about that. I was very passionate about dignity and dying and dignity and living. And next thing I knew, I met Connie Kemmerer, and 2 days later, John Gettler, and I was on the foundation the day I moved in, which was a delight during an important time of raising the money for our exciting new Sage Living Center. And then Scott recruited me and Cynthia to come over and be an advisor on the trustees board. So it's been a very interesting experience being treasurer at the foundation and also now being on the board of trustees. I think my focus is really to bring my experience in finance and technology and innovation to really help the hospital grow, to continue its amazing quality, and to create new innovative services that we can, particularly areas like invasive cardiac care. So I'm really excited to have a chair now with the Board of Trustees and look forward to serving all of you. Thank you.
Susan, you're next.
Had to unmute first. Okay. Good evening and thanks for having me. My name is Sue Kritzer. Since moving here in 2007, I've been a very active volunteer for St. John's, serving in leadership positions with the auxiliary as well as a board advisor. And it was through being a board advisor that I was appointed a trustee to fill a vacancy last fall. In my role as trustee, I currently serve as vice chair of the board, chair of the Quality and Compliance Committee, and a member of the Strategy Committee. I'm also chairing the CEO search charged with identifying our new CEO. As a degreed engineer with an MBA, my education and background provide me with skills and experience to make a meaningful contribution as a trustee. I have a lot of experience in both General Motors as well as in the medical device industry. That's taught me a lot about leadership and quality, and those definitely apply to this position. I'm running because I want to continue to help in any way I can to best provide care to our community in a financially responsible and sustainable manner and help us remain an independent nonprofit.
Okay, Cynthia, your turn. Oh, remember to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Hogan. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees for St. John's. We moved to Jackson in 2012. I had spent 32 years in healthcare before that and wanted an opportunity to continue to be involved in healthcare and to give back to the new community I was joining. I've been on the board. I chaired the search committee that identified Paul Beaupre, and then after that I was asked to be the board chair. And I've been focusing on strategic planning, human resources, and streamlining overall board operations. We are lucky to have a fantastic staff at Jackson and in our community hospital. And I just want to take the opportunity now to thank them for everything they've been doing with COVID over the last 6 months to keep us all safe. I'm asking for another 4 years on the board because I honestly feel with everything they're doing for us, anything I can do to help the community and help them is what I'd like to be doing.
Okay, the first question of the evening is going to be asked by Tom, and Debbie, you get to answer first.
I'm glad you guys mentioned the CEO. I know it's, probably on everybody's mind, thinking about the search. And so I guess I want to ask, the search is obviously kind of taken care of. You have the search firm, you have your search committee that's working on that. But I want to know what you see as the board's role in supporting the new transition or the new CEO through that transition as they're hired and then sort of learn the ropes at St. John's.
That's a great question because I think it's a pivotal role that the board needs to play. And the challenge is thinking about what type of candidate we bring forward. Is it somebody who's an operational CEO, or as we were lucky enough with Paul, both an MD and a very extraordinary operational executive. So I think also it's most likely this person will not be from Jackson. So giving them a really good understanding of our community, the challenges of really being in rural healthcare, and then starting to think about understanding the staff and the challenges we're facing on really ensuring that our staff have great places to live. As you know, we've been working on that. And then to think about ways to create more innovative ways to grow the hospital and serve more patients in and outside of Teton County.
Susan, you're next.
I have to echo what Debbie said. Really our role is to collaborate with the new CEO, and our job is not to run the hospital, it's to work with the hospital and the executive team and provide our varied backgrounds and experience through the committees that we work on in strategy, in quality and compliance and governance. And we can help orient the new person as they come in by, help them understand what it means to be in Jackson and what our role as a board is, and share our knowledge about the things that we've been working on with regards to strategy and competition, the state of rural health care and housing in the community, and just work with them and support them and continue to build upon what we've already built and have, and continue to grow and improve.
Cynthia, you're next. You need to unmute yourself.
It disappeared, sorry. The role of the Board of Trustees is pretty specific. We're not supposed to get involved in day-to-day administration. That is the role of the CEO, and we're hiring somebody who's an expert in that area. The role of the board is to hire the CEO and then to jointly set strategy together, and then to set the objectives for the CEO to make sure that they're carrying out the strategy. So in helping a new CEO get established in Jackson, we want to do those things. We have a strategy. We want to make sure that they understand the strategy, that they have a chance to add to it, and then to set the objectives and collaborate with them so that they have the best opportunity to carry out those strategies. In order to do that in Jackson, one of the most important things is that the CEO is quickly embraced by the community. And one of the reasons Paul Beaupre has done so well here is that during the interview process, he met with over 200 people in the community. Because of COVID, we can't do that this time in the same way. And so one of the responsibilities of the board will be to make sure that the new CEO has the opportunity to quickly meet as many people in the community as possible, and therefore can be successful. And of course, the same goes for the staff of the hospital, that they have the opportunity to get to know the staff, to develop trust and a strong relationship with the staff so that they can be successful in carrying out the strategy.
Okay, Scott, your turn.
Thank you. Certainly, as someone on the search committee, we won't hire, and we'll have our choice of someone who will come in with terrific terrific experience. Both MDs and non-MDs, both men and women, are all being considered, and some great candidates have emerged. So I think others have said it well, that helping the new CEO with prioritization. In my case, since I chair and have for 8 years finance, audit, and IT, to try and really make sure they understand the nuances of how we're successful financially, but then serving on nominating and governance, and having served on almost every committee over the 8 years, really just try and help them with the prioritization and the nuance for success, and then making introductions to critical community members, because we have to help them connect, and then they'll take it from there.
Okay. Debbie, did you want to?
I just think one thing that, even though we covered a lot of territory, we have an amazing launch of Sage Living in June 2021. And we have to really help our new leader and support really understanding the complexities of launching such an exciting, innovative new center. But it's going to be really a privilege to be part of that. And this individual will really be the core of leading that in the community. So it's a big event.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
The next question, Tom's going to ask another question, and Susan will be the one to go first this time.
Great. Let me pull up my questions. I want to turn to, I think, the other thing that's dominated the last couple board meetings, other than the CEO search, which is affordable housing. And I think affordable housing in the realm of the hospital in particular, and needing to be able to have workers who are able to get to the hospital quickly, or able to live on this side of, or on the Jackson side of the pass. So I guess I'd like you to, I know that St. John's has a plan that Tom's been presenting on, but I want to know if you can describe kind of what the hospital board's role should be in either advocating for or developing new housing specifically for hospital workers. So do you feel like the board is more of a sort of networking and advocacy body with elected officials, or do you feel like the board should be driving a strategy in which St. John's is actually buying more property and developing its own housing?
I guess the answer to your question is yes. All of the above. Really, in order to provide the high level of care that we do provide, we need to clearly address employee housing. And our needs are multifaceted. They range from people needing $650 a month to $2,800 a month home rentals, and homes to be purchased from anywhere from $225,000 to $550,000 is the ranges that Tom's work has put in this. There's some things we can do on our own, and we will do on our own. And you know, the first thing that we did through the strategy committee was determine what those needs are. Now we're working on what can we do ourselves and what do we need to collaborate with others on. So the role of the board is to work with the administration to fill those buckets, and then work with and collaborate with other entities within the community to help us provide a comprehensive solution, because we're not the only ones facing this problem.
Cynthia, you're next.
As chair of strategy and human resources, I've been working very closely with Tom on this project. It's something that's personally very important to me. So we talk quite regularly about it, above all about the process and how to go through it, so that at the hospital, when we're looking at housing, on one hand, we are focusing on what's within our own control. Which means that we first do a survey with our employees to understand their needs. And we had 470 employees respond to that survey. And as a result, we had very detailed information and an understanding for the first time on the broad nature of the needs that employees have, from rentals to ownership, from condos to townhomes to tiny homes. And the next step, once we understood those needs, was synthesizing it, discussing it with the community at large, not just the hospital, and then coming up with solutions and options. And that's where we are now. And the board works with Tom on the process and on the timeline, so that every 2 to 3 weeks, we're biting off a concrete phase in time for the next board meeting, so that we can have an open discussion with the board and the community. And we've invited in people to attend on that phase of this housing problem. So for example, the next meeting, we're going to be talking about solutions. We're putting those solutions into a grid. We're looking at the cost of each solution, the risk in each
Cynthia,
solution.
I'm gonna have to get you off and
Okay.
let Scott answer.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dee. I think Cynthia did a great job explaining what we're doing, and we're trying to be realistic and play the hand that we're dealt. Having said that, I do believe we need to have a goal of being more articulate in the community, in front of our commissioners, and especially in front of our citizens, articulating the downside if we aren't successful as a board and as a community, helping us achieve affordable workforce housing for our workforce. Our quality of care will suffer. That's a foregone conclusion. We had a surgical nurse who explained that in real terms, in real life situations. And so we all understand that. And now our next step, now that we know very clearly what our needs are, our price ranges, our timelines, we need to be out in front of the community, articulating in real life stories the need here and how critical it is for our quality of care to remain world class.
Okay, Debbie, your turn.
Thanks. I think my colleagues have done a really great job explaining where we've been. And I think we're all anxious to find a very collaborative way forward with the other, as everybody has said, there's many other communities inside of Jackson that are dealing with the same challenges in their businesses or nonprofits or across the entire board. So collaboration is key. I also think we want to reach outside of Jackson and look for some other interesting and creative ways where we could perhaps get some funding to to really support some of these efforts. So, you know, all of us are trying to bring our different backgrounds together to be helpful in this really important next stage that Cynthia was discussing, which are the solutions. So we've done a good job defining the problem. Now we have to do a very incredible job and creative job in creating solutions that we think have the most opportunity to get implemented quickly.
Okay, thank you. Tom, do you have another question? And Cynthia will go first this time.
I do. Let's see. Let me hold this up. So I think this is a bit of a foregone conclusion for this race, considering there's no challengers who aren't the incumbents. So I think it's likely to say that you all will probably sit on the board come election day, unless there's some dark horse write-in candidate. And I guess I wonder, I think that the board is very well split along gender lines. I think there's good representation of men and women on the board and in hospital administration. But I have noticed in my role as a healthcare reporter that the board and the administration are overwhelmingly white. And I wonder, in a county that has a growing Latinx population, by some estimates, it's 1 in 5 people. I wonder if you see that as a problem, and what the board can do to sort of foster diversity, either within its own ranks or within the ranks of the hospital itself.
I agree with you. It's an issue that we've talked about as a board. We'd like the board to be more diverse in many respects. As you mentioned, yes, we're diverse gender-wise. But we'd actually like the board to represent the Jackson community as much as possible. Unfortunately, one of the things that I've realized being on the board is that it takes up a huge amount of time. I probably spend 20 hours a week, and that's daunting for people. And it's very hard to find people who have enough time, even though they would like to contribute it. And so we've actually approached quite a few people in the Latino community to ask if they'd be interested in being an advisor for the board, learn more about the board, and hopefully run for election. And what we've pretty much consistently heard is, I'm holding 2 jobs already. I don't have time to commit to the hospital. So then I usually try to get into a conversation about how can we improve access? How can we make sure that we're meeting the needs of the Latino community at the hospital? And how can we make sure that when people have access to the hospital, that they feel welcome at the hospital? And I think those are very important things for us to do. So at the same time that we would like to bring advisors onto the board and trustees onto the board, we also want to make sure that the Latino community feels welcome at the hospital and has access as they need.
Scott, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Great question. I was lucky enough to serve alongside Letty Lira, who was our Latinx representative, as a board advisor. That was part of that succession process we started back 7-8 years ago when I joined the board, and she was a recruit. She couldn't evolve into a board of trustee just because of what Cynthia mentioned. The time commitment just was prohibitive with her full-time job. But trust me, we're absolutely and have been looking for a Latinx representative to replace Letty, because we absolutely benefited from her wise counsel about better outreach to the Latinx community and so on. We do have a great relationship with 122, as does the Community Foundation, which I serve on and have for 8 years. So we will keep trying to do everything we can do to get diversity in that area again.
Debbie.
Thank you. I'm actually the chair of NOM and governance, so it's part of our committee that Scott and Cynthia are both involved in with me as well. And we have been very focused on this. And as Cynthia, and even then you add COVID to everything, it's just an incredible hard time, particularly people with children trying to juggle everything. The other thing we are concerned about is often the Latino community is afraid to come to the hospital. And so I'm really wondering if we can develop some other forums to give them comfort of what it would be like if they come and know ICE will not be here waiting for you. And I think that's really important because they need to know that they're going to get incredible quality care and will be taken care of. So maybe we need to come up with some other ways to engage while we continue to look for more candidates. And anybody out there, if you have a candidate, please email me. I would love to hear about it, and we will be on it right away because we think it's a real missing part. And Scott would say we need more men, but thank you.
Susan.
That was strictly talking about the future, not the present.
I think well said, and it reflects what everyone said. It reflects the conversations we've been having. As I was thinking about this, I thought about myself. I pursued a degree in engineering back in the early 70s when only about 10% of the students at the university I went to were women. Thinking about it, I realized that I was there because GM sought out women who wanted to study engineering and gave me a chance. And that pretty much sums up much of my career. Somebody gave me an opportunity to learn about something I might be interested in, and I was able to pursue it and show that I could do it. So maybe thinking about that, and based on that experience, I would say that some of the things we can do is give folks a chance to learn about what we do and roles they can fill, bring them into our foundation, bring them into Pulse, bring them into the auxiliary, bring them on as advisors and as student volunteers even at the hospital, expose them to our mission, get them passionate about it, and hopefully they'll want to join us.
Okay, Jacob, if you are ready to start asking questions, Scott would go first on this one.
Here. I just want to say thank you all for taking some time to be doing this evening. We all really appreciate it. Thank you, League of Women Voters and the library for helping to organize this. This first question is a little lengthy, so if you guys need me to repeat it at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Without further ado, compared to the rest of the country, healthcare in Wyoming is very expensive. What do you believe should be done in Jackson to lower costs while maintaining quality? Additionally, how do you balance access with costs? Should Jackson be offering all of the services it does if they can be done more efficiently at a neighboring hospital?
Well, Jacob, that's a fabulous question. And it just so happens and fortuitous that we just did for our housing study, a study of the cost of living. And as you can imagine, housing was about 200% of the rest of Wyoming. It's fascinating. Medical services were 99% of the 100% average. So I can say with pride, in my 8 years, we've had mostly 3% price increases, which turns out in hindsight to have been lower than probably was prudent. Recently, we had an 8% price increase to catch up, but we're still 15 to 20% below Wyoming and other mountain resort numbers, and the cost of living at 99% says we're cheaper than Casper, than Evanston, than, go down the list. So we're really proud of that. And as citizens serving on the board, that's what we try and do, to have just enough come in to reinvest and keep the hospital vibrant. So great question.
Debbie.
I think there's some very interesting things, despite going through this and somewhat horror of COVID. It has also created some incredible innovation. And one of the areas has really been telemedicine. People have been trying to launch this forever, and all of a sudden it's taking off. And I participated in an event with Weill Cornell Hospital and heard their extraordinary impact they're having from telemedicine. It's the doctors like it better, the patients like it better, you can get second opinions. And we're launching this at St. John's, and you maybe have seen ads. It's a really significant opportunity, not only to answer, perhaps you have a concern about something that seems minor, but you don't want to go to urgent care. But it's also an opportunity to do things like remote monitoring, which we believe can really prevent a lot of visits to the hospital and really help improve quality and patient care. So I think there's a lot of things like that that we can continue to pursue that can allow us to increase our coverage while not increasing our cost.
Susan.
I have to keep remembering to unmute. Agree with both what Scott and Debbie said. You know, I think that we need to focus on the things that we are needed here and wanted by our community here locally, and things that we can do well. You know, we are here to serve the community as a nonprofit, and we, you know, have a payer mix that's maybe not as good as some other hospitals and in for-profit in other communities. So we really need to focus on the things we can do well. And we need to pay competitively, and we need to address housing. But, and we also need to address the fact that, you know, there may be challenges to us in providing that care from for-profit competitors that may come in and try to erode or cherry pick profitable procedures that help us pay for the things that lose money within the hospital community. So I think, you know, we have our eye on all of those things, and we're paying attention to them. And we're, as Scott said, you know, despite the fact that Teton County is a more expensive place to live, it's not a more expensive place to get medical care.
Cynthia.
When we first moved to Wyoming, we were astonished that the cost of our health insurance doubled from what it was in New Jersey. So I think Jacob is right on track when he says the cost of healthcare in Wyoming is extremely expensive. And there's less choice. There's only Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? It's really an insurance issue in Wyoming because there's only one insurer. But Jackson itself doesn't have healthcare that's any more expensive. Teton County healthcare is no more expensive than the other counties in Wyoming. So given the fact that people in Teton County can't necessarily afford insurance, I think the hospital has done a really good job in trying to help people sign up for the Affordable Care Act. I know that Joe Albright, for example, is very involved in that. Just making sure that we can get as many people enrolled as possible so that they do have insurance. Within the hospital, some of the things that we've tried to do is focus on preventive care and good family practice and good internist care to avoid going to specialists, because that's where it gets really expensive. And the more programs we can have around wellness and strong healthcare clinics, the more we can help people take care of issues that may later be chronic or severe or expensive. And that's really, I think, where some of our passion lies. For example, mammograms at the hospital are only $300.
Cut you off.
Sure.
Thanks, Cynthia. Jacob, another question, and this time Debbie will go first.
All right, thank you all. Debbie, I know you actually already touched on this a little bit, so feel free to elaborate as much as you need to answer this question. But what is the future of telemedicine, and how can you leverage that?
Yeah, I think what really has been interesting is the hospital was on this 6 months, more than 6 months before COVID. And it was a couple of industrious employees who just kept digging their way at it. And for example, Lisa Finkelstein is one of the people involved in this, and Sandeep Ray have done an extraordinary job exploring how to do this more effectively. And one of the things in telemedicine is availability of technology and the internet. So they figured out ways to use remote clinics that were in more remote areas where somebody could drive a few miles to be able to use the technology there. It was a very clever idea. They kept solving, you know, some of the issues that make it work. So it is not just that offering of you know, less urgent care, but I think this whole area of remote monitoring is going to change the face of how we think about taking care of ourselves. And so we're really on top of that. And part of what we're working on in the innovation part of Nom and Gov is really starting to team up with VCs and some really promising advanced technologies that we could really be a hotbed for doing proof of concept to really bring some of those kind of care. I know I'm over my time, but I haven't done it once. So the big area people are very anxious for here is stroke care, cardiac care, and emergency. And it's the cardiac doctors will tell you it's time to balloon, minutes to the balloon is critical. So it's not always easy to airlift somebody. So we're really trying to get creative how to make that work. And I think there's a lot of interest in this community to help on that. Sorry, I apologize, Susan.
It's
No,
all
that's
good.
fine. Susan, you're next.
As Debbie said, I think that when COVID hit, we were really well prepared to take advantage of telemedicine. We had things in place already. We had people working on it. And actually, I think COVID has really kind of broken the dam, if you will, or allowed us to break through in terms of both patient and physician acceptance of telemedicine, as well as reimbursement rates, which encourage people to use it as well. So I think that, from this point forward, I don't think there's any going backwards. And as Debbie mentioned, we definitely have people working in this area to continue to make these offerings. And I think St. John's has a big opportunity to serve as kind of a hub for that with surrounding communities in the ways that she mentioned.
Sorry about that. Cynthia, you're next.
So telehealth has grown about 20-fold in the last 6 months because with COVID, obviously people want to stay out of the physician's office. But really, the fact that a lot of people don't know is that insurance companies started to pay for telehealth visits, and that changed behavior immediately. So you might ask, what's new? What's coming? And St. John's is piloting now telehealth visits for all different diseases. Well, I should say more like primary care, FP type visits first with our own staff, with the idea that rather than coming in to see a doctor, they could actually just do a visit from their home. If their kid had an ear infection, they could, in the evenings, ear infections always happen on the weekends or evenings. They could make sure their child gets the telehealth visit with a pediatrician online from their home. And these visits are only going to cost $75. Once the kinks have been worked out, then we will be taking that to the community. So that's something the community can expect to see over the next 6 months.
Scott.
Yes, I'm really proud to have been involved in the inception of telehealth. We had no idea about COVID, obviously, but we supported a Skunk Works operation that got started. As Debbie said, Lisa, a urologist, was teamed up with an IT member, and they got started. And thank God for that, given COVID hitting. So we were lucky, not smart. But those two have done a great job, as Debbie indicated. And I agree completely. This is a whole new wave of medicine, not just the consultative side, but the monitoring side. I come from an engineering and business background as well. So that sort of stuff is fun for me to be involved in. I've built a major innovation company that became a NASDAQ company. So again, I love playing in that sandbox. So that'll be fun in my next term, hopefully.
Okay, Jacob, I'm hoping you have another question, and Susan would go first.
All right. Let's see. So we kind of already discussed this a little bit. Again, feel free to elaborate. What are the key characteristics that your new CEO should have? Short and sweet.
Okay. Well, quality is number one. That number one, they have to have a passion for quality, and that has to be the overriding goal, principle, whatever you want to call it. Quality of care is number one, and they have to understand what that means and how their actions speak louder than words with regards to quality. Secondly, they have to be able to develop really strong relationships with the physicians and make sure that we're aligned. They have to be able to work with the board to develop strategies that allow us to continue to enhance care in our community, as well as to remain financially stable and sustainable. And they also need to serve as a leader in the community and embrace the community, and as Paul has done. He has some big shoes to fill, but I'm sure we're going to find the right person to do that.
Cynthia.
Sue addressed a lot of the important issues, and I'll try not to repeat what she said. For me, the number one thing the CEO has to do is be an excellent leader. We have 750 employees, the largest employer in Teton County, and they need to trust the CEO, that the CEO is looking out and helping them have the resources to do their job well. And I think everybody knows that the staff at St. John's is compassionate and well-trained and wants to do the best they can and gives excellent care. And so it's up to the CEO to be able to balance so many conflicting responsibilities around quality and what the community wants and the cost and fiduciary responsibilities. And they have to be able to do this and gain the trust of their staff.
Scott.
Thank you. Yes, I think Sue said quality is number one, and it certainly is. And inside of quality is safety and the patient experience, which, as it turns out, is a real part of holistic quality. As physician relationships, as she said, but staff, Paul's had this incredible ability to round and walk around and manage by walking around and connect with the hospital staff, motivate the hospital staff. Sustainability financially and environmentally. If we can't be financially sustainable, we would cease to exist. And then community connections. A rural hospital, one of the most exciting things about a rural hospital is a CEO who can connect with the community and be someone the community looks up to. And I think Paul has accomplished that, unfortunately, through the mirror of COVID, but he had accomplished that even before COVID showed its ugly face. Thank you.
Debbie.
Thanks. Scott, you stole my line, managed by walking around. We all end up having a colonoscopy or something, and we always want the first appointment in the morning, and guess who is walking the halls? And the team will tell you every single day at 6:30, he's in and out, walking through emergency, walking through who does he know that's in the hospital, checking on, somebody who's coming into sub as a nurse. I mean, it's quite a thing to watch. And I think the word that we've also heard here is trust. And you know what, when the numbers all spiked up on COVID this summer, it was Paul who said, I've had it. Listen, people, here's what's going on. No more barbecues, no more. And people listen to him because they trust him. And I think these are the things which all of my colleagues have mentioned, but they are big shoes to fill. But I have total confidence that we'll find somebody amazing.
Great. Tom has one more question. And so this will be the final question. And Cynthia, you guys to go first.
Thanks, Dee. I wanted to end on looking ahead to when we have a COVID vaccine, which is hopefully sooner rather than later. And I wonder if you could explain how you feel like the hospital itself and then the community at large can position itself to get an earlier distribution of it, because we know that distribution is going to take pretty much all summer, I think, to get it around the country. So I wonder what you think that we can do to hopefully be on the earlier side of that distribution rather than the later side.
So we've already tried to start taking steps in that direction. And I think Paul has mentioned that one of the reasons this year we really want to get as many people in Jackson vaccinated for the flu is because that demonstrates our ability to get a high number of people willing to take vaccines and to be able to operationalize it in a smooth manner. And that will put us ahead for being able to build a story on why Jackson should get the COVID vaccine early. If we can demonstrate that we can get a large percent of our community to take the vaccine. Also, we've been building relationships very actively through members of the community with companies that are not only working on the vaccines, but also that are working on the tests. And I think we demonstrated that during a time where it was almost impossible to get tests, we were able to work with those companies personally to get them to send us tests on a regular basis, really every week, for our first responders, for the staff, for search and rescue, and then for people in the community who needed it. So the connections of people in the community, plus what we're demonstrating with the flu shot, plus the fact that we are a major tourist site for the state of Wyoming should all help us get access to the vaccine.
Great. Scott, you're next.
Well, that's a great question, Jacob. I think it's unlikely it's going to be one vaccine, and it could be the results. And I'm not an expert here, but I do a lot of reading and have a son that's in this business. And he tells me that it's likely there'll be a vaccine or two, if they're approved, that'll be better for an older population of those, primarily have the T-cell assistance, and then ones that younger people might find more than adequate, that are sort of antibody based. And so one size probably won't fit all. And it's likely, since we don't know which of the 10 leading contenders are even going to get through trials, we have to be nimble and set our sights on what age groups we're really going to want to serve, and where we can pull strings and get our unfair share.
Debbie.
Sorry, trying to find the mute button. I think there's two things, and my colleagues have really said most of this, but it's also really demonstrating that we can get our count way down. The more that we can demonstrate as a community that we can bring down this level that we saw just so spike up in the summer, then again in the last few weeks, I think if we can demonstrate that, we become a better case for an early availability of the vaccine. I also think we got to work very hard to educate people about the safety. And it's hard because we have sped up a process that has a lot of safety gates. So I think this is, really very, very tricky. And without a doubt, we have some extraordinary members of this community who have just worked miracles to help us as we were trying to desperately get PPE. But this one's going to be harder because the federal government's going to manage it. So we really have to stay on top of all angles of really improving our chances for a vaccine arrival in Jackson.
Susan.
Like everybody said, get your flu shot, get your flu shot, get your flu shot. Show that the community will embrace vaccination, and that'll help move us to the top of the pile. Also, I know that Paul and his team are already working on being prepared. You probably have read that some of the vaccines require very special, very low temperature storage freezers, and they're already putting their orders in early to make sure that we get deliveries before they're unavailable, that storage capacity. And really show that we have a plan and an ability to reach out and provide the vaccines to the community in an efficient way. And then also I know that the executive team is working already with the state government to basically say, hey, you know, we want to do this. We're a community that's going to be receptive to it, and we're a big economic driver within Wyoming. So I think we're doing the right things, and the community can help by learning about the vaccines and getting their flu shot.
Okay, it is now time for closing remarks. And we'll start with Scott. You have a minute approximately, Scott.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, this would be, if I'm elected the last term I would serve, I think I'm an important bridge from our progress we've made over the last 8 years to continuing that progress. I've got a deep experience in corporate governance, nonprofit governance, having been on Oregon Health and Science University's governing board for 10 years, the Oregon Foundation Board for 10 years, and then this board for 8 years. Worked with in the healthcare industry as a board member then for 18 years. So I think continuing that and serving my last term, working, and I was instrumental in recruiting these fine ladies on our board. So the reason we have so many ladies is I was at the forefront of recruiting all of them and the ones prior. So I'm very supportive of increasing our diversity, and the Latinx board member is on all of our agendas for the future. So I think I can bring a lot, and look forward to serving.
Thank you. Debbie.
Yes, Scott really did this whole idea of creating advisors was amazing, because we really are a very diverse team. And as he said, I promise as chair of non-gov that we're going to really go after looking for some incredible Latinx candidates to add to the board. It's a critical part of our community. We really need to create that connection. My experience in Silicon Valley and the deep connection to the startup community can be a really important way to bring some exciting new emerging technologies for us to look at, to create innovative ways of adding new services, where I really hope to spend a great deal of time, particularly on cardiac care. And it's something that I think we just have to find a solution for. And most of all, continue just to have a real passion to continue to create this an amazing place and really play a role as we launch Sage Living. I think it's going to be a very exciting time for our community to see having memory care, an independent rehab facility. It's really going to be first rate. So I think it's going to be an exciting year in front of us.
Cynthia. Oh, sorry, Susan. I got out of order. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I guess to close, to say that it's been a challenging year for everybody would be an understatement. But because of the dedication of our team at St. John's and with the support of our electeds in the community, we have managed to navigate the year, keeping our citizens safe and meeting their health needs and remaining financially solvent when so many other rural hospitals have not been able to do that in our closing. I just read 14 have closed already this year. It's been no easy task, but we've done it by working together. Moving forward, we have challenges such as employee housing and potential for-profit competition that we're facing that we need to address while still maintaining a nationally recognized quality of care in the face of COVID. It won't be easy, but I really truly believe that this group of trustees will help us meet these challenges in a way that allows us to remain independent, nonprofit community resource whose focus is to serve and reinvest in the community. And I just want to close by recognizing and thanking our team at St. John's for their dedication and personal sacrifices during the pandemic, and also thank the community for all the support that we've received during this time.
Now it's Cynthia's turn.
Thank you. I have a passion for healthcare. I've been working in healthcare for 32 years. Since I've retired, I've been on the board at St. John's, but I also am the chair at Whole Food Rescue, because access to food, access to healthcare, and access to education, I believe, are 3 rights that everybody deserves. In March, I realized that there was a gap with COVID for people who are leaving the hospital and might not actually have access to food when they were going into hotels or other places to keep their family safe. And so I set up Quarantine Cuisine along with another co-founder, Gavin Fine Dining. And we've been running that to help people in the community for the last 6 months. We thought Quarantine Cuisine, which delivers fresh groceries and prepared meals for free to people who need them, would only be around for 6 weeks. Little do we know about COVID. And 6 months later, the demand is still growing strong. So I feel that in many ways, I want to continue on the hospital, because the hospital does such wonderful things, and they're incredible people to be around. When I'm around the hospital staff, I feel like it's a motivation to give back at a whole nother level. And that's something I really appreciate. So thank you to the staff. Thank you to the leadership. And I'm glad I have these skills, and it's a time when I can serve.
Well, thank you all. This has been a great amount of information. I did not know a lot of this, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. To all of our viewers out there, don't forget to vote. There's still some time to vote. You can vote tomorrow at the county clerk's office. If you have your absentee ballot already, I went at the dark hour of 5:30 in the morning and still got to vote. So you can do it. Thank you all to the hospital board members. We appreciate you coming tonight. And now I believe Roby is in our waiting room, and we'll get to hear a little bit about the Teton Conservation District. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tom. Thank you, Jacob.
Thanks, Tom, Jacob.
Hi, guys.
Thank you all.
Roby's not here, Dee.
Oh dear, he said he was on standby. So, well, then that concludes our evening, and thank you all for coming. The Conservation District, there are 2 people running for seats. They are running unopposed, and the Conservation District is a very important part of our community. They do a lot of work. I know mainly from my own experience with the Conservation District and the work that they're doing on the Flat Creek Water District here where I live, and how important that is to me and to the water quality and other issues of conservation in our area. So don't forget to vote for them too. All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night.